After talks in Ukraine, the UN Secretary-General has sounded the alarm about the danger of a catastrophe at a nuclear plant occupied by Russian forces. Also tonight, an answer to the question, who will be the new host of the University Challenge? The proportion of top A-level grades in England, Wales and Northern Ireland is down on last year, but remains higher than before the pandemic. Just over 36% of all grades were marked A star or A, a fall from nearly 45% last year. It's the first time students have sat formal exams since the COVID-19 outbreak. The government said it had hoped top marks would fall somewhere between last year's record high and the 25% attained in 2019. Students have also received results for BTECs and, in England, the first T-level technical-based qualifications, allowing them to progress to a degree or into apprenticeships. Our education correspondent Sean Dilley reports.
Statistically, A-level students haven't performed as well as those last year and the year before, but the figures do not paint the full picture. Teacher assessments had decided results in 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemic, but grade inflation had been accepted as an inevitable consequence. These students at Coleg Gar Further Education College in Carmarthenshire were pleased with their grades.
Better than I expected, of course. Lots of anxiety up to my results today, but it was all negated once I got my results.
I had 3 A's and a B, and I'm going to take these to Aberystwyth University to do a Maths and Stats degree.
The results were better than I expected. Specifically, one subject I got an A in, which I didn't think I could.
The government's position has always been that traditional tests are the best way to protect the integrity of the education system. This year, it said, was the first step towards returning to normal. Paul Britton is the principal at White Sixth Form College in Hull. He says this group of students in particular saw their education disrupted by the pandemic. But he's pleased his pupils overcame that.
They've had a really hard kind of go at it in terms of in, out, through the pandemic in their first year in particular, and then through this second year, trying to get their heads around the adjustments to the examination system and kind of fronting up to the fact that they'd have to sit these exams for the first time. And thank goodness, they've done amazingly well.
How well, though, does depend on where the students happen to live. 39% of those in London achieved top marks compared with 30.8% in the North East. The chief executive of the Social Mobility Foundation, Sarah Atkinson, says the gap between the performance of the most privileged and the least privileged is still evident and quite significant.
Those young people from low-income families, first generation to go to university, they're the ones with the least flexibility to negotiate last-minute changes. They've got the least knowledge of how to work the clearing system, and they've got the least flexibility to be able to take gap years or adapt their plans. So they need quite a lot of support over the next few weeks.
Students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland also picked up their BTEC results and the new T-level vocational qualifications, which are broadly the equivalent to 3 A-levels. The overall pass rate was 92%, with more than two-thirds gaining a place in higher education.
More than 425,000 students have a place in university or college, which is the second highest number on record. Around 20,000 didn't get the results they needed, but there are 27,000 courses available via clearing, the system for filling remaining places. Catherine Sezen from the Association of Colleges says students shouldn't panic if they didn't get what they wanted.
There are options for everybody, whether that's going through clearing or whether you look at doing an apprenticeship or going straight into employment. I think the key thing is to take advice, the National Careers Service, go to your local school or college and speak to them and say, what are the options? And you don't have to make options right this minute today, but do give yourself time to think about what you want to do next.
Just under two-thirds of students who apply to university were offered their first choice. Claire Marchand is the chief executive of the admissions service UCAS.
It is competitive, particularly at certain institutions and certain courses. We know, as you say, more 18-year-olds, more demand from those 18-year-olds, but also, crucially, the world-class higher education sector that we've got in the UK is still really attractive to students globally, even compared to Australia and Canada and the US. It is a really attractive place to come and study.
England's exams regulator Ofqual says this year's results represent a staging post on the journey back to normality. With her assessment, here's our education editor, Bramwell Jeffries.
There was always going to be a bit of a jolt for A-level students with their first grades based on exams since before COVID. So, despite the fact these 18-year-olds are no less bright or hard-working than those in the past 2 years, the numbers getting top grades have fallen. This is a planned and deliberate step back towards the normal distribution of results before the pandemic. There were other readjustments too, as private schools saw a larger fall in their share of top grades from last year, narrowing the gap with the state sector slightly. A more worrying, persistent gap in top A-level grades is between the rest of England and the affluent South East, with London seeing the biggest gains compared with 2019. A few of the most academically selective universities have not gone into clearing at all this year. Some will hold the number of UK places and recruit more international students who pay higher fees. Despite tougher competition for places, most students have had their first choice of place confirmed. For those in England, there is little incentive to delay. Go to university in 2023 and you will be repaying your student loans for longer, over 40 years rather than 30.
A long-serving senior executive of Donald Trump's family business has admitted conspiring with the company in a 15-year tax fraud. Alan Weisselberg, who's 75, avoided paying tax on more than £1.5 million worth of unreported perks. Under his plea deal, he'll serve 5 months in prison and will have to give evidence against the Trump Organization. Donald Trump himself has not been accused of wrongdoing. From New York, here's our correspondent, Netta Tawfiq.
Alan Weisselberg admitted that from 2005 to 2021, he, along with the Trump Organization, orchestrated a scheme to defraud federal, state, and city tax authorities to enrich himself and others. Executives were paid with special off-the-books perks that were never reported. Weisselberg received $1.76 million in concealed income through a rent-free apartment, lease payments on 2 Mercedes-Benz cars, and private school tuition for his grandchildren. As part of the deal with prosecutors, he will be sentenced to 5 months in jail, will pay $1.9 million to tax authorities, and will have to testify at the Trump Organization's upcoming criminal trial in October. Donald Trump himself is not implicated. However, prosecutors uncovered evidence of this scheme as they were investigating another criminal matter, whether the former president inflated his assets in order to obtain favorable loans from banks. Alan Weisselberg was viewed as an ideal cooperator. He started with the company in the 70s and has knowledge of the company's inner financial workings. But Weisselberg has refused even now to cooperate with the probe into his longtime boss.
Separately, more details have emerged tonight about the potential offences the U.S. Department of Justice believes Donald Trump may have committed following a search of his Florida mansion 10 days ago. A judge has unsealed some of the documents that allowed FBI agents to conduct that search. More could soon be made public. From Washington, Chichi Izundu reports.
So far, what has been released is more information on the warrant, which gives more detail on which specific crimes the Department of Justice are investigating against Donald Trump, including willful retention of national defense information and obstruction of a federal investigation. Now, this all came about after a group of media organizations asked a court to unseal details of the affidavit, that's the statement under oath, which outlines the evidence the government had in order to obtain that warrant. The Department of Justice said it didn't want that being made public, but today the judge said parts of it could be. He's given officials a week to make suggestions on which elements can be released and which should stay secret.
The man accused of stabbing Sir Salman Rushdie in New York State has pleaded not guilty to attempted murder and assault charges. 24-year-old Hadi Matar appeared in court in Chautauqua County, where the attack happened last Friday. He was remanded to appear again next month. Sir Salman, who's 75, remains seriously ill in hospital, but has been taken off a ventilator. The Attorney General of Chautauqua County, Jason Smith, said prosecutors hadn't ruled out adding more serious charges.
Well, there's a hate crime statute, so the way the hate crime statute works in New York State is it serves as an enhancement device so that, let's say a B-level felony can now go up a step. So we're looking at that. We chose not to indict it for reasons that, it's important to us to go with where the facts meet the law, and that's our decision for now.
Passengers are being warned that train services will be slow to recover in the morning after the latest 24-hour strike by 45,000 rail staff. The network came to a halt much earlier than usual tonight after running at around 20% of normal levels through the day. The head of Network Rail has accused unions of moving the goalposts in negotiations to resolve their dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. The RMT warned that industrial action could continue indefinitely unless the government took an active role in finding a solution. Our transport correspondent, Katie Austin, has spent the day in Norfolk.
From Glasgow to London Euston, major stations were quiet today as many passengers heeded the advice not to travel unless absolutely necessary. In Norwich, some people did turn up to catch what trains there were.
In the last set of strikes, I couldn't go in, and I knew about them. Actually, completely forgot about the one today, but yeah, it disrupted me going into work that week.
They didn't start at the same time as usual, because I'm an intern at the minute, and showing up late at the office is not the best way out.
So we're trying to get 4 kids to Gatwick today. So we booked our tickets probably 4 months ago. We're leaving an hour and a half early just in case. And fingers crossed, we'll get there.
More routes were open in Scotland than previous national strikes, but still only around 20% of usual services ran overall, and some places had no trains at all. 40,000 members of the RMT union walked out today in their 5th day of strike action in 2 months. This time round, 5,000 workers in the TSSA union took part too, as did a small number in Unite. Unions are demanding pay increases to reflect the higher cost of living and for job security and conditions to be protected. Rail bosses insist they want to give a pay rise, but changes or modernisations are needed to afford it. Network Rail says the RMT should put the offer it rejected last month to its members. Andrew Haynes, the organisation's chief executive, criticised the union's approach to talks.
Slow negotiations, painful negotiations, absolute lack of clarity on what it would take for this strike to be called off, shifting goalposts, and we're desperate to bring this to a resolution in a way that's affordable for the country.
The RMT's General Secretary Mick Lynch said the government was doing little to help find a resolution.
There is a deal to be done, but I spoke to a senior negotiator from Network Rail this morning on this picket line. He came along and said hello. We've got a decent relationship with them. We could build a solution if we were allowed to. But at the minute, the politics of the Conservative Party leadership election, I fear, is stopping this dispute being resolved.
The Department for Transport said union leaders were inflicting misery on millions of people instead of working with industry to agree a deal to bring the railways into the 21st century. With no breakthrough after long-running talks, another national strike is due to take place on Saturday.
Residents have been describing how armed police forced their way into a house in West London and arrested a 44-year-old man on suspicion of the murder of a disabled grandfather. Thomas O'Halloran, who was 87, was attacked in Greenford while using his mobility scooter. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Tom Simons.
After stabbing Mr. O'Halloran alongside the A40 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, police say a man ran from the scene with a knife. They released clear CCTV pictures of a suspect and warned he could be dangerous. Early this morning in Southall, people were woken by the sound of a raid.
They had like a battering ram to bash the door down, so that's probably what I heard. I saw loads of guns and loads of sort of riot gear come out. We saw sort of loads of police officers bursting in, and I think one person shouted sort of drop what's in your hand.
Scotland Yard confirmed the arrest had followed the release of CCTV images and a man remained in custody. The front of the house has been covered up by police and forensics officers have been removing items. The killing of an 87-year-old grandfather has shocked the community and senior police officers who described it as appalling. A public meeting has been held this evening and police patrols have been stepped up.
An MP has pleaded guilty to breaching COVID rules nearly 2 years ago. Margaret Ferrier, who was then with the SNP, attended events around Glasgow and travelled by train to London when she knew she ought to be self-isolating. She then returned to Glasgow on public transport despite being told she had tested positive. The 61-year-old, who now sits as an independent, admitted she'd put people around her at risk, as our Scotland correspondent James Shaw reports.
The indictment against Margaret Ferrier lays out in stark terms what she has now admitted she was guilty of, that she culpably and recklessly exposed the public to the risk of infection, illness and death. The offence happened in September of 2020, when COVID restrictions were still in force across the UK. One Saturday, Margaret Ferrier felt what she later called a tickly throat and decided to get tested. She was advised to self-isolate until the result of her test was known, but she went to a church the next day and on the Monday travelled to London and spoke in the House of Commons. After that, she discovered she'd tested positive, but instead of self-isolating in a hotel, Margaret Ferrier decided to get the train back to Glasgow. She was later suspended by the SNP, and Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister and leader of the party, has said she should stand down as an MP, although she cannot force her to do so. Margaret Ferrier will be sentenced at a later date. It would be open to the sheriff to consider a prison sentence, but a fine is probably more likely.
The NHS COVID booster campaign will begin on the 5th of September in England. It'll be the first time that a vaccine with dual protection from both the original virus and the first Omicron variant is offered. Moderna's bivalent jab received approval in the UK earlier this week. Here's our health reporter, Simon Dedman.
COVID infections have continued to fall in England, according to the latest data from the UK Health Security Agency. But new variants and waves are expected. Care homes are still the setting where people have the most severe reaction to COVID. And this is where most of the autumn booster campaign will begin across the UK, with health workers going to care homes and visiting those who are housebound. Subject to supply, every jab in the autumn rollout is expected to be a new bivalent vaccine, providing dual protection against the original strain of COVID and the first Omicron variant, BA1. The original vaccines still provide very good protection, and people are urged to accept whichever jab they are offered. Those eligible for a booster can use the national booking system from the 5th of September. The following week, the NHS in England will start inviting the rest of the eligible population for a vaccine, starting with those most at risk of serious illness and the over 75s. A similar rollout will take place in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
British travellers have been struggling to board flights after the NHS COVID pass became unavailable this afternoon. Users trying to access proof of their vaccination status via the NHS app and website found the service wasn't working. A message said there was no alternative route for accessing the information digitally. The problem has since been fixed. The head of the United Nations has called for military activity at Europe's largest nuclear power plant to end. Antonio Guterres said he was gravely concerned about the safety of the Russian-occupied Zaporizhia plant in southern Ukraine. He spoke after face-to-face talks with President Zelensky and Turkey's President Erdogan in the Ukrainian city of Lviv. He also discussed how to increase grain shipments across the Black Sea. Our correspondent, James Waterhouse, reports from the capital, Kyiv.
President Zelensky's guests are the best chance of diplomatic progress in this war. It's because President Erdogan and Antonio Guterres are the architects of the only breakthrough so far, a grain deal which has, and still is, allowing Ukraine to export thousands of tons through the Black Sea. Turkey's leader, who sees himself as a broker in this war, also has direct dialogue with Russia. In a press conference, Mr. Guterres urged Moscow and Kiev to show a spirit of compromise and make sure the grain agreement continued to succeed. Russia's occupation of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant was also discussed. Mr. Guterres and President Zelensky called for a demilitarization zone, with the Ukrainian president accusing the Kremlin of nuclear terrorism. Russia's defense ministry has refused to pull out, claiming Ukraine was putting the site in danger. President Erdogan used this press conference to defend Kiev by warning of another Chernobyl disaster, the worst nuclear accident ever in 1986. As for the biggest issue of all, the prospect of peace talks, President Zelensky repeated his condition that Russia would first have to return the territory it's illegally taken.
A court in Chicago has heard evidence from a woman who claims the R&B star R. Kelly abused her hundreds of times before she turned 18. The singer is on trial accused of obstructing justice and child pornography charges. Last September, he was convicted of sex trafficking and racketeering. Our North America correspondent Peter Bowes has more details.
Using the pseudonym Jane, the woman, who's now 37, told the court she first met R. Kelly in the late 1990s when she was in school. Her aunt was a professional singer and worked with Kelly at his recording studio in Chicago. Jane told the jury when she was 13 she asked him to be her godfather because she saw him as an inspiration and mentor. But within weeks, she said, she was sexually abused at the studio and at Kelly's home. By the time she was 18, Jane said they'd had sex hundreds of times. She's a key witness in the case, with Kelly accused of conspiracy to obstruct justice by allegedly rigging a trial in 2008 on state child pornography charges stemming from a purported video of him and Jane having sex when she was underage. Prosecutors say she was paid off and threatened by the singer to ensure that she didn't testify at the trial, at which he was ultimately acquitted. R. Kelly is currently serving a 30-year prison sentence for his conviction in New York last year when he was accused of using his fame to sexually abuse fans.
People with Apple iPhones, iPads and Macs are being encouraged to update their software as soon as possible after two major security flaws were uncovered. The technology giant admits the issues, potentially allowing attackers full access to someone's device, may have already been exploited. In the city, the 100 share index ended the day 26 points higher at 7,542. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones closed up 19 points at 33,999. On the currency markets, the pound is trading at $1.19.3. Against the euro, sterling is at €1 18.3. That makes a euro worth 85 pence. Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin has said she'd be willing to take a drugs test after a video surfaced on social media showing her singing and dancing exuberantly at a party. According to the country's media, people in the background of the leaked footage can be heard shouting about cocaine. Ms. Marin insists she was not doing anything illegal, as Justine Green reports.
At 36, Sanna Marin is the world's youngest Prime Minister and has made no secret of her social life, often photographed at music festivals. The German newspaper Bild has called her the coolest Prime Minister in the world. But last year she had to apologise for going clubbing in Helsinki after coming into close contact with her foreign minister who had COVID. And now this has hit social media. It's a video in which she's seen with friends, including Finnish celebrities, singing, dancing and posing for the camera. Ms. Marin said she had been drinking and was partying in a boisterous way, but defended her actions, saying the party was not a public event.
These videos are private. They have been shot in private quarters. I'm displeased that they have been spread out to the public. It has been a situation in which I have been spending an evening with my friends, partying, also quite lively, dancing and singing.
But the opposition party leader, Riikka Purra, is calling for her to take a drugs test, saying there was a shadow of doubt hanging over the Prime Minister. Other politicians have criticised Ms. Marin and the media coverage of the party, saying they should be focusing on Finland's domestic problems.
The BBC's media editor Amol Rajan is to become the new host of the quiz show University Challenge. He'll be taking over from Jeremy Paxman, who's stepping down after nearly 3 decades. Our media correspondent David Silito reports.
University Challenge. It's just a few weeks away from its 60th birthday, but only 2 people have ever hosted the show. Bamber Gascoigne, and for 28 years, Jeremy Paxman. Next year, a 3rd name will be added to the list, Amol Rajan. He is at the moment the BBC's media editor, a presenter on the Today programme, and he has his own interview series on BBC Two. He's also been a presenter on The One Show and Radio 2, and a celebrity judge on MasterChef. The next role, he says, is the dream job. University Challenge is his favourite programme. However, the 60th anniversary series, which will begin at the end of the month, will be presented by Jeremy Paxman. Amol Rajan will take over in the autumn of 2023. He's also announced that he'll be stepping down from his role as media editor later in the year.
England's cricketers are facing a sizable first innings deficit in the first test against South Africa at Lord's. At the end of day 2, the tourists reached 289 for 7. Eleanor Oldroyd was watching.
England's bowlers stuck at their task patiently and positively, but it's South Africa on top after 2 days. They have a lead of 124 with 3 wickets left. England lost their last 4 in the first hour of the day, finishing 165 all out. Ollie Pope fell for 73. Kagiso Rabada took 5 for 52. South Africa batted grittily through much of the day with wickets hard to come by. Captain Dean Elgar played on for 47. Sarel Ervia hit 73 before becoming the first of Ben Stokes' 3 victims. Stuart Broad took his 100th wicket at Lords, but with the bowlers tiring, Jansen and Maharaj took advantage with a stand of 72 for the 7th wicket to take the momentum away from England.
At the European Championships in Munich, Joe Fraser has become the first British man to win an all-around gymnastics title. In the athletics, Britain's Jake Hayward won a silver medal in the men's 1500 metres, and there were bronze medals for Ailish McColgan in the women's 5000 metres and for Jasmine Sawyers in the long jump. Now for a first look at the morning papers. Pictures of jubilant A-level students and a couple looking somewhat surprised feature on several of the front pages. But the Times warns that record appeals to exam boards loom after top A-level grades fell by 60,000 from last year. The Daily Mail says 43,000 students are scrambling for a place at university in what it calls a clearing frenzy. The Daily Telegraph reports that international students who pay higher fees have been awarded 20% of places at the UK's top universities. What has become of our country, asks the Daily Mirror. It reports on the ordeal of an 87-year-old man whose family says he waited 15 hours outside overnight for an ambulance to arrive after a fall. The Guardian says the annual bonuses paid to water company executives rose by 20% last year, despite most of the firms failing to meet sewage pollution targets. The Metro calls the pay increases a scandal. Finally, The Sun reports that the Queen's granddaughter, Lady Louise Windsor, has been working in a garden centre this summer for little more than the minimum wage while waiting for her A-level results. It comments, the cost of living crisis must be bad. A team of British divers has found the first US battleship to be lost to enemy action in the First World War. The USS Jacob Jones was discovered 120 metres below water over a century after it went missing off the Isles of Scilly. Our South West of England correspondent Jenny Kumar reports.
Over 100 metres down and over 100 years after the sinking, a diver's video captures the moment their team finds the final resting place of the USS Jacob Jones. It was a moment of pure joy after months of research and planning. Dominic Robinson, a Plymouth-based diver, was part of the team.
When I saw that bell and I saw the letters Jacob on it, that was fantastic.
On the 6th of December 1917, a German submarine torpedoed the ship. She was the first US destroyer to be sunk by enemy fire. As the crew abandoned ship, weapons on board began to explode, causing carnage in the water and killing some of the men who were already swimming for their lives. In an unusual act, the commander of the German U-boat sent a signal to American forces to let them know of the sinking. Around 2/3 of the crew lost their lives.
It's nice that we know where this one is.
The maritime historian Dr. Harry Bennett feels this is a significant discovery.
The poignant image of the ship's bell sat amongst the wreckage of a ship which has lain under the sea for 105 years. That brings a lump to my throat. And I remember those brave men doing what they were trying to do to assist the flow of supplies to the United Kingdom.
The dive team were able to spend only 20 minutes exploring the site, and they're keen to return.
The headlines again, there's been a fall in the number of students receiving the highest A-level grades in the first exams since the pandemic. The longtime financial boss of Donald Trump's family business has agreed to testify against the firm after pleading guilty to tax fraud. Network Rail says negotiations to end ongoing strikes over pay are slow and painful, with another national walkout scheduled for Saturday. An MP suspended by the SNP when she travelled across the country by train knowing she had coronavirus has admitted endangering public health. BBC News.
Which was read by Andrew Crawford. In Cheaptoyman's childhood memoir, a new car leads to tears and chaos at home. Without warning, and only sometimes follows shortly. But first, with a look at the weather forecast, is Darren Bett.
Hello there. After all the downpours and the flooding that we had in the southeast of England on Wednesday, the sun came out on Thursday and temperatures reached 28 degrees at Heathrow Airport. Many other parts of the UK did see some cloud and patchy rain, and that cloud on a weak weather front is pushing to the southeast of England through the rest of the night. Clearer skies will follow from the north, and there may be a chance to see the northern lights tonight in Scotland, perhaps even the far north of England and Northern Ireland. Temperatures here around 10 to 12 degrees with those clearer skies, but a warmer night in East Anglia and the southeast with that cloud coming in, maybe even a bit of rain, temperatures of 16 or 17 degrees. Into Friday then, and any early rain in East Anglia and the southeast shouldn't really amount to much. It'll soon move away and we'll see the sunshine coming through. And many parts of the country will start sunny on Friday. We will see the cloud increasing a bit, and we're going to find the winds picking up in Scotland and Northern Ireland. That'll blow in a few blustery showers, perhaps one or two heavy ones in the northwest of Scotland. And we could see one or two light showers in western parts of England and Wales, but generally it's going to be dry, the sunniest skies towards the eastern side of England, and temperatures going to be quite similar to what we had actually yesterday. So 20 degrees probably in eastern Scotland and eastern parts of Northern Ireland away from those showers, and we're going to be looking at the low to mid 20s across England and Wales, perhaps a bit higher than that again in the southeast of England. Our weather is tending to come in from the Atlantic, and as we head into the start of the weekend, we're going to start with some rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery winds too. It'll be followed by sunshine and maybe the odd shower around. What's left of that rain will get stuck really across much of northern England during the afternoon on Saturday. Ahead of that, rest of England and Wales, sunny spells, some warm sunny spells, and just one or two showers. And temperatures not really changing very much during this weekend, but as we head into the second half of the weekend, it will tend to cloud over from the west. Rain is slowing down, probably going to arrive in western areas by the end of Sunday.
Darren, thank you. And now on Radio 1 of Kit Duvall's memoir about her unpredictable childhood. Today, Kit and her sister Tracy begin to find ways to skip the weekly meetings at the Jehovah's Witnesses. At home, tensions run high.
Without warning and only sometimes, written and read by Kit Duvall. Episode 4. My parents are arguing. Dad's diabetes is out of control and my mother is full of late wisdom. You've got it from eating chocolate bars while you're driving that number 8 bus, Arthur. Dad is persistently disobedient and Mom reminds him of the rules. You can't have hermasitas in custard with a sponge pudding. You'll kill yourself the way you're going. Then you can all bring me back, ain't it? The resurrection or whatever you call it. He winks at me. I rise from the dead straight into God's paradise, isn't it, Sheila? Diabetes done. She stops washing up and faces him. What about your paradise? You saving up every penny you earn and building that bloody house in St. Kitts while this one falls down around our ears. His face wears a terrible look. The house in St. Kitts is his dream, his reason for coming here, and the reason he doesn't feed us and dress us, and the reason Mom goes to work and tries to run the house on coppers. He sits between me and the stairs and I dare not move and get caught in the crossfire. When I come here, it was only to go back. I tell you that long time. You've had kids since then, Arthur. You can all come if you want, Sheila. I tell you, I'm going home. You make me sick, she says under her breath, but we all hear. Dad stands up and towers over her, 6'6" versus 5'2". My paradise will come before yours, Sheila. She starts to cry. I just want to live on my own. I've had enough. She shoves past us and gets her ministry bag. The door slams. She will be out for hours. She will knock the doors of strangers and tell them about the good news of the kingdom, clutching her Bible and turning the pages with shaking hands. Now there are days on end when Mom's in a bad mood. She goes to work as an auxiliary nurse at Dudley Road Hospital, volunteering for every unpopular shift. She earns extra money and gets away from the house. And all week she complains about Dad to anyone who will listen. I mean, what kind of fool helps her husband buy a house in another country? Me, that's who. She notices me and points a finger. You make sure you don't make the same mistake I did. Marry a man who's got more to him than cricket and the bloody telly. She starts crying or disappears somewhere in the house. Her disappearing becomes more regular. She starts dropping a name into conversation. Ned, a neighbour down Passy Road, a nice man with a lovely front garden, a black man. It takes ages for us to cotton on. One day, she sends me and Karen to the shop for some bread. On our way down Passy Road, I see him, this tall man with a trilby. He says hello when we pass. Karen waves at him. We get the milk, and on our way home, we pass him again. Sweet, he says, rattling a paper bag. We take one each, and he tells us what he's planting, red and orange flowers to remind him of home. Guyana, he says. Beautiful country. How was your mother? I see my father in him, the yearning for home, but he's softer and rounder, scruffier as well. She's fine, thank you, I say. Say hello from me, he says. Karen rushes home and tells Mum she saw Uncle Ned. Mum flushes red and looks at me with frightened eyes. It's okay, I say. We only took one sweet each. But she grabs her purse and is out of the door in a flash. I forgot to tell you to get some sugar. She's gone for ages. And when she comes home, she slumps into a kitchen chair. What is it your father says? She asks me. I don't know. Yes, you do. Your mother is a crazy woman. That's what he thinks of me, and he's right. What did I expect? I thought I had a way out. All men are the same, aren't they? They're all promises and sunshine, but it's all bloody drivel at the end of the day. She sits staring out of the window, tears in her eyes, her pale face red and lined. Every so often, Mum will collect milk bottles. 3 pints get delivered every day. We watch the old laundry basket fill up with the empties. It's only a matter of time. She waits until Dad's gone to work, then opens the back door and hauls the clanking laundry basket outside into the concrete yard. She selects a milk bottle from the pile, picks it up and throws it with all her might against the wall of the outhouse and watches it smash into tiny pieces. She picks up another one and throws it again. We stare out of the upstairs window. You can smell the fight, hear the grunt and exhale as she works her way through the bottles. It makes a kind of music, the bottles, and the sound of her fury. When the basket is empty, she goes inside and fetches the broom. She's fine then for a few days. Mum and Dad turn things up a few notches and try to outdo one another with their holidays. Dad decides to go back to St. Kitts for the first time in 20 years. He orders an enormous barrel that he lodges in the front room and starts to fill it with goodies to take home. Chocolate, soap, shoes and treats we have never seen before. We creep in from time to time and take something out. Then he starts having suits made and spends days matching shoes, handkerchiefs, cufflinks and tie pins. It takes months for him to prepare. He gets a 6-month open ticket, but he's home in 2. He looks tireder and blacker. He's lost some of his luggage, and it wasn't what he expected, he said. Things had changed in the 20 years he'd been away. Nobody to play cards with, relatives that didn't look after him properly. He's lost weight and confidence, his shoulders sagging under the disappointment. I don't remember it so hot. You couldn't get a good chicken, nothing on the telly. He stops talking about it eventually, after the excuses have run out, and he's found a way to make sense of not belonging, of missing Morecambe and Wise, damp summer evenings, and, unexpectedly, his own children. As soon as he comes home, Mum decides to visit Auntie Mary in Key West. She lays a little cardboard wallet on the kitchen table. "There's my tickets," she says, "next Friday week." She spends the whole 6 weeks in Key West with an extra one for good measure. Only Kim bothers with the meetings. Me and Tracy get our first taste of Top of the Pops and Monty Python and bask everlastingly in the forbidden thrill of Thursday night telly. When Dad's out at work, we have the house to ourselves. He doesn't make us tidy up or go to bed on time. And all the days run into one another until Mum comes back again and opens her suitcase with a flourish. She's brought afro combs for Kim and Tracy. For weeks she compares her tan with ours and starts saying things like, "Pass me my purse." My father winks at us behind her back, and when she leaves the room he says, "Want me tell you, your mother is a crazy woman." School ends and I'm overjoyed to be going to Garrett's Green Technical College to do secretarial studies. A tidy little woman with coral lipstick unlocks the door to the classroom and gestures us inside. The room is set up with desks in rows, each dominated by a manual typewriter, but right by the door, near the plug socket, there is a single, ultra-modern electric IBM font-ball typewriter, and a tall girl grabs it. Typewriting. I learn in the first 5 minutes from Mrs. Strick that typing is not a word we use. We are in advanced secretarial studies because we will be a secretary to a very important man, sitting in on business meetings with our legs crossed at the ankle, taking down shorthand and serving the coffee. The tall girl with the electric typewriter is Faye Mortimer. She's older than us, 19, with a tumble of creamy hair and very tight jeans. She makes it plain at break time that she lived a life before she came to college. She waitressed her way around California and surfed the golden sands of Santa Cruz. She had love affairs and her own flat, but had to briefly move back in with her parents because she knew that her future lay forevermore in America, and for that she needed qualifications. She offers round her cigarettes and we all take one. I am jealous to the core of her cool looseness. If I'm ever going to edge to the front of her magic circle, I'll need a cheesecloth blouse, a wristful of bangles, and my own pack of cigarettes. It's not long before I'm tight in Faye's group. She arranges to meet me after class to go into town. We sit upstairs on the bus and have 2 fags each. Faye tells me more about California, not boys, about scenes, not clubs or pubs. I shrug and nod and try to look like I've heard it all before. We get off the bus and head up New Street. There's a narrow little alley between a boarded-up shop and a second-hand jeweller's, and she nips down there. I follow. In she goes through a door with peeling paint and up some concrete stairs. "Hey, hey!" she shouts. It's freezing and musty, but at the end of the long walk there's an open door and music playing. The sun shines through dusty windows and onto a tall white man, so thin his stomach is concave. He's ironing a red silk shirt. I don't know what to say, so I drop my bag and sit down on huge floor cushions. Faye kisses the man, who's called Max, and sits next to me. She puts a tin in my lap and I open it. There's a khaki sort of loose tobacco inside and some cigarette papers. I look back at her. "Give it here," she says, smiling. The man is putting on his silk shirt. His leather trousers hang low on his narrow hips. He looks like a pop star. Faye passes me her new cigarette. It tastes half bitter, half sweet, and I close my eyes and concentrate on holding the warm smoke in my chest for as long as possible. Max goes to the record player in the corner of the room. He pulls me up and starts doing a floaty dance. Golden years, wop wop wop. Faye is nodding her head and smiling. When it's really black outside, Faye walks me to the bus stop. "You're okay," she says. It's not a question, and I suck it down where I keep the sweet, sweet smoke.